Hi everyone. Today is Jan 20. This is the meeting for the code organization, Kate's code organization under SIG architecture. So it's just the three of us. So let's get started. The main topic that we had lined up for discussion today was, is there a way we can have, do we need a separate GitHub org just for code that we fork? Currently, we have a few places where we use, where we borrow code from other people and stick it. One is in Kubernetes SIG's utils. The other one is the third-party directory in various repositories, including Kubernetes. And it's getting hard to maintain these, and especially getting when we want to adopt something, how do we preserve history so there is some context there, and it's not just a copy of what we end up vendoring where history is lost from the original project. So those are some of the challenges, and the other challenges are around how do we make sure that it's just us who are using this, so we don't break other people. So are there any new things that are coming down the pike that will be useful for us in terms of the Go language itself, the hooks and extensions and whatever that are available there. So let's get started now. Tim, the floor is yours.
So I'm always been big on structure, and so when I look at the GitHub Kubernetes repo as a flat repo of hundreds of, as a flat org of hundreds of repos, I get stressed. And because I don't know how to find things, I don't know what's there, there's no organization to them, there's not really great metadata on them. And there's this sense, and maybe it's just me, so maybe I'm nuts, but there's this sense that when they're all on the same level, they're all roughly of the same size and importance. And it's clearly not true if you look at Kubernetes versus Kubernetes utils. They're not nearly the same size or importance. Yep. They're managed differently, right? And especially if we kick more things out of Kubernetes, it's hard to tell what are the important repos and what are the less important repos. And you also touched on something that sort of has been bothering me. We end up supporting people who use our libraries, which forces us into uncomfortable positions when we would prefer that it was only us using our stuff, right?
Yeah.
And not all of it, but some of it. And then there's the, Go said from the beginning, don't make util packages that have lots of random crap inside it. And we did that. And the goal of Kubernetes utils was supposed to be a bunch of really small, standalone, generic libraries, because maintaining a bunch of independent repos was a pain in the butt. Well, maintaining a big omnibus repo is now a pain in the butt. And as evidenced by, importing some third-party thing that drags in a bunch of dependencies. And gosh, if I just want to use Kubernetes util pointer, which is a nice little utility library, I have to vendor, or at least be aware of all these dependencies, right? And Go modules are a little bit opaque in this regard. They sort of do what they're going to do, and you don't have a choice about it. So this got me thinking about, maybe we're really just doing it wrong, and we should be doing more smaller repos. And I feel like it would be easier to manage things like history, et cetera. But as I said before, I don't want to make I'll pick on IP tables because it's a library that I touch a lot, right? I don't want to say GitHub Kubernetes IP tables is in the same conversation as Kubernetes kubectl or Kubernetes, eventually kubelet or kubeproxy or whatever, all the repos we put there. It seems like noise. So GitHub, of course, doesn't have any structure. There's no folders in GitHub. If there were, I'd probably suggest we use those, but we have orgs. So a long time ago, I started squatting on a bunch of Kubernetes dash stuff orgs on the thought that maybe one day we'll need them, right? And so I wanted to bring up the topic here, maybe we're at an inflection point where it makes sense to start doing that. I know there's a lot of machinery and prow and everything else to add a new org, but it's not impossible. We have a couple of them already. And then I had this thought, right? Go has this semantic of the internal directory, where internal is only usable by things that share a prefix, right? And I think that's the semantic. And so in theory, if we mapped, this is where having the vanity domain actually comes in nice, right? We could map the vanity domain kates.io/internal to a different GitHub org, and then all of every path underneath there could remap under this other org, and then only things that are kates.io/something could use those libraries. And suddenly I went, oh, that actually seems like it might be worthwhile, but I haven't actually tried it.
Right. So two questions there, right? Like one is, how badly are we breaking people who shouldn't be using our internal packages, but do, like K3s and K0s and folks like that who end up, for better or worse, importing kates.io/Kubernetes today. We are going to break them.
Well, if they're importing kates.io Kubernetes, we're not going to break them because they're going to keep doing that because they're not moving Kubernetes out, right? But like hypothetically, Kubernetes utils, right? Okay, yes, we've made a statement about support there.
Sorry, no, I mean, will it break, like if they import kates.io Kubernetes and kates.io Kubernetes pulls in the Kubernetes internals, will they still be able to compile?
Oh yeah, they'll still be able to compile, but the package kates.io internal foobar is only usable by other packages that are kates.io Kubernetes something.
Okay, so
right, but they wouldn't be able to use it themselves. You couldn't take company.com/my package and import Kubernetes or kates.io/internal.
Can they use a replace or any of those things?
Oh, I'm sure there are tricks they can use to get around it, right?
That's like, exactly the point, right? Like,
but they can take the code and copy it and get around it too, and then complain when we break upstream, right?
That we don't worry about because we say, hey, this is a license thing, and you can do whatever you want with our license.
Right, but if they take specific action to work around the barriers that we've put in place, and then they complain that they cut their fingers on the sharp edges, I don't feel as bad, right? I do feel bad today. Like I would not want to break Kubernetes utils because we've said these are a bunch of generic libraries and we're going to support the API, right?
So we don't have any downstream implications for people who are building and shipping Kubernetes itself. We don't really need to worry about folks who are breaking the glass, so to say, to use the internal stuff. We told them, this is internal, you shouldn't be using it anyway. Right. So those
it's really the same as us, like when we use Go packages, when we use code from the Go upstream and we want to modify it, like we've had to modify some internal repositories, and the only answer there is we fork it.
Right. Well, I guess at this point we have to do a POC and see if it works, right?
That's right. I put like 66% odds that it will work the way I think it will. But to do it, I'll have to go and make a change to our Nginx redirector and like actually deploy that and then try it out. Yeah,
I don't think we have to worry about getting axed or LGTM for doing that. What else is there? So one just slightly related question, like GoLogger, who owns GoLogger at this point?
I do, and Patrick Oli and a couple other community people maintain GoLogger.
Okay. It's not under GitHub management in Kubernetes GitHub management, right?
It's not a Kubernetes project, no.
Okay. That's fine.
But it's created as a separate org as opposed to like fucking GoLogger, right, so that I can add extra people. So Patrick stepped up. He's doing all the logging stuff within Kubernetes, and right, he stepped up and he's been really super awesome on helping that. I'm totally welcoming to other people if they want to also step up, though I hope, knock on wood, that GoLogger is more or less done. I was working on a PR this morning to handle, it was porting your nil stringers patch, right? Okay. The same idea. Yeah. But more or less, I think it's done. I don't want to be adding a million things to it.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's fine. So coming back, so what we are saying here is like, we are okay with trying this out as a POC. If it works, then we'll like make it official in terms of like handing it off to GitHub management and saying, hey, do we have, did you squat on Kubernetes dash internal?
I have Kate's dash internal. Somebody else has Kubernetes dash internal.
Okay.
And I don't know, and it seems like a dead repo, and we can maybe try to get it back. I'm squatting on like dozens.
Okay.
And
we can use anything at this point, right? As long as
right.
the character says internal, we are good. Yeah.
Exactly right. So I think there's actually 3 questions here, right? And they can be answered independently. One, should we start doing more independent, smaller repos? 2, should we put those in a separate org just for organizational sake? And 3, should we facade them with Kates.io internal? Right? They're all like, they're additive questions.
Right. So my thought process usually is, let's not make it too easy for people to do this. Then there's going to be an explosion of these things, and we need to strictly regulate how many of these go in, because people, there's lots of folks who are doing, for better or worse, gaming statistics and those kinds of things happening. So let's not make it very easy.
Yeah, I mean, that is the downside of having lots of repos, is you get lots of points, right?
And you don't know who's doing what and where, and it becomes a hassle.
On the other hand, it becomes much easier for people to watch repos that they actually do care about, right? Like the main reason that most of us turn off watch on KK is because there's just too much in there.
Yeah, I am still doing it. So, but yeah, very few of us do it for sure. Yeah, so I'm okay. Those are all secondary concerns and not primary concerns as such.
Okay.
So I think we should open up an issue and just work through what we need to try. And
okay, and I'm happy to like drive just the testing of it. We'd have to decide ultimately if, like, do we want to move things like Kubernetes utils? Like, we could take Kubernetes utils and break it up into 10 or however many libraries there are in there, and then depend on that from the existing Kubernetes utils library, so that they were exposed, but that wouldn't be the primary interface to them. You get what I'm saying? Like, yeah, we could choose to do that as the proof of concept.
So one of the problems that we had in the past, even for like SIG storage to adopt kutils, they tried to put something in kutils and it broke some use cases. So we need to find a way to run some kind of Kubernetes tests. This is true for cAdvisor too, right? Like, we don't know what we break when we make a change in cAdvisor until we try to bring it into a KK. So the scenario is exactly the same. So we need to figure out a way to be able to test some of these things under Kubernetes master, so to say. And if
this is
that will be the thing, right? Like, they will have independent tests for sure, but typically it breaks when we integrate it into Kubernetes.
Yeah, and this has always been the problem with having things in multiple repos. It's like, how do we integration test all of the components, right? If you're doing kubectl and kubeproxy independently from each other, how do you test, or kubectl and kubeAPI server, how do you integration test those two? This, I think, like, we can draw the scope of this of like things that have APIs at the Go level API, not at the REST level of API. And so things like API diff has been really useful in GoLogger, of warning me, hey, like little subtle things that I didn't get the importance of, has warned me about, right? So we should run API diff on kutils, and we should have a hard line of like, hey, no new dependencies. Like, we're not going to take in cloud libs. I remember the mount one had a bunch of libraries, right? Like, we're not going to do that. So we need to find those principles.
Understood. So we need a checklist saying, okay, this is these are the conditions under which we would be populating a new repository in this GitHub org, and that'll make me feel a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I think ultimately the rule kind of comes down to it's you either make a reason why a new package is in KK, or you make a reason why it's not a new repo. Right. And show me why it belongs with something else, not why we have to make an excuse to make a new repo. I think we should flip that on its head.
So the other example that came just yesterday, recency bias is, for example, in Kubernetes, when we update Golang, as soon as a public release is made on the Golang side, we adopt it immediately. And then we kind of like make sure that we vendor in things, or for the JSON encoding, we pulled the internal JSON encoding stuff from Go 117, which depends on Go 17 features and APIs. So the Containerd folks were trying to update to newest version of Kubernetes, and they saw that, and they were not able to build in 116. So they went back to a previous package, so they said, okay, we are going to stop at 122.5 or 6. We're not going to go to 123. So we have to add guarantees around compilability under various versions. Generics are coming down the pike, and like if you have a mixture of libraries with generics and without generics,
there's going to be a lot of demand for using them because they solve a lot of the problems that we bump our heads on.
Correct.
But if we care about compilability with older Go versions, then we will have to be careful there, especially in libraries. KK is cool. We can do whatever we want in there because it's not supposed to be used by anybody else. And if they use it, I just don't feel bad.
Right.
And but I agree on the rest.
This morning was, we were looking at a issue. John Howard and I were looking at an issue where there was an init method in Go opencensus.io.
Okay.
Sergey might know this. They were using an init method to start a Go routine, even if you just import the package. And like the thing was, we are doing the same in klog.go. So yeah, I didn't have an answer for that. We were telling people not to do something, but we are doing the same thing.
Well, but past mistakes don't justify future repeats of the same mistake.
Yeah, right? That's why we need to write these things down. So it'll serve as a guideline. So we are not trying to cargo cult this, and there is a set of things that people can check off on, say, okay, there is no init methods anywhere. And
I mean, I think that should be part of the tooling. Like, hey, you're vendoring something in that has an init method.
Yeah, no fatals and no panics and those kinds of things too. We need to write a bunch of things down.
So, one of the things that Go 18 is introducing is Workspaces. And it's funny because in their like release notes for their alphas and betas, there's like a one-line mention of it, but it's actually hugely powerful. And I've started converting Kubernetes to use this mechanism, but it has some implications. Well, first of all, it allows you to have multiple modules and work on them atomically. So you can do like a Go list and have it actually work across modules. So here's an opportunity for doing things like better integration testing, right? You can have a mechanism that actually checks out a whole bunch of different repos, has a single work file for them, and then integration tests them all. But I lost the train of my thought. I was going somewhere with this and then I forgot it.
You must be thinking about the testing, breaking compiler changes, those kinds of things, right?
Yeah, I lost where I was coming from. Yes, it was related to the, like, this is part of 18. And so, if we depend on it too much, it will break for older compilers.
Right.
Yeah, anyway, I'll if it comes back, I'll bring it back up. But okay, I'm happy to try to help out here. My time's pretty stretched for the next couple of weeks with Kep Freeze and everything else coming up. But I don't think it's a very difficult experiment.
It's easy for me to like give me one of your repositories and I'll create something which we can try. Yeah, the only other thing I can think of is I'll need a PR against K8s.io repository. That's probably a couple of lines or 3-4 lines.
Yeah, and in truth, you could probably just deploy it without even a PR and say, oh yeah, this works. Here's the PR for it, right? And roll it back quickly if you so desire. Give me a second, and I will tell you. Let's pick a repository that we want to, or an organization that we want to go with. All right, tell me when you hear one you like. K8s internal, K8s util, Kubernetes add-ons, Kubernetes approvers, Kubernetes charts, Kubernetes community, Kubernetes contributors, Kubernetes controllers, Kubernetes demos, Kubernetes developers, Kubernetes ecosystem, extensions, graveyard, incubator, retired, ingress, lib, Kubernetes maintainers, Kubernetes owners, Kubernetes playground, Kubernetes providers, reviewers, sidecars, SIGs, testing, tools, universe, util, utils, X. I kind of liked X.
Yeah, so far X seems to be the right one.
That's the list of orgs that I'm currently squatting on.
They should be charging you for it.
And of course, I missed Kubernetes-internal, so somebody else got it. So we could try to claw that back. I like X, but X feels like Go X tools, like it's actually things we are okay with people using, versus like K8s internal would be things we're not okay with people using.
Yeah.
About vendor or something like that. Kubernetes vendor.
But we could also, that's a good one. We could do Kubernetes vendors or Kubernetes third party. But if we're going to present this, if we're going to assume we're going to present this as Kubernetes internal, K8s.io/internal/other stuff, I would suggest we just go with K8s internal for the test. Is that fair?
Yeah. K8s internals.
All right, so I'm going to
internals.
Internal, just like Go's semantic of internal.
Yeah.
I'm going to add you. Invite. Oh, my password. Confirm. I'm going to make you an owner and send an invitation. You now have an invitation. Does anybody else want an invitation, or just let Dims play with it?
I'll let Ben and Sergey answer if they want.
I'm fine.
All right. Well, it's there. You're an owner now, so you can add people if you need to. If we decide we're going to keep this, I'm happy to hand it over to the Kubernetes GitHub team.
Yeah. Okay. Sound good.
I'm still not super clear why a separate organization is needed, only to make it different level. Or...
yeah, I mean, if there's no way, well, back up. Let's assume that we want to use the internal semantic of Go, like the name internal, right? It has special meaning. If we wanted to do that, we then have to somewhere in our redirector config list which repositories are internal and which repositories are not. And if you go to github.com Kubernetes, you can't see that at all. So putting it in a separate org means like, hey, I'm looking at the K8s internal org. That's my first alarm bell ringing, right?
Okay.
And then the redirector is actually really trivial because it just says, if you see K8s.io/internal in the URL, then take the rest of the URL and reroute it under K8s.io or K8s/K8s-internal. So it just becomes an easier config, right?
Hopefully we won't break anything else like GoSum or any of those other things that are built on top. Hashing stuff, proxy.
I don't know. I guess the only way we're going to find out is really to try. It shouldn't. I mean, the way Go modules are set up here should be sane enough for what we need to do.
And this should work in 117 itself, right?
Internal's been around since like 12.
Okay, then yeah. So 16, 17, 18, as long as it works. Across those three, I think we're good.
Yep.
Okay, so we need like a checklist. I think I'll defer to you on that. If you can write something up as these are the rules for this GitHub org.
Let's do the experiment first. I'm not going to.
Yeah.
I was just about to write it on my to-do list, but I realized I have to turn the page, so that is a bad signal.
Okay.
So, like, if you can do just a proof of concept, just put a trivial repo there,
Yeah.
and set up the redirect and try to use it from a library and get an error from Go that says, "Hey, this is an internal repository." Then we'll declare victory on the POC and we'll write principles.
Okay. Okay, I'll take that action item.
Awesome. And honestly, I will expect dissent. I expect there are people who are going to say, "What? You're going to do 100 small repos instead of one big repo? What a pain in the butt for vendoring! What a pain! Now I have to send 18 PRs and I can't do atomic changes." And like, yep.
I'm still waiting for breaking things apart from staging. Honestly, Tim, it's high time. We need to.
Well,
out.
The truth is, this Go Workspaces stuff makes the staging model actually infinitely less awful. Like it's actually pretty powerful, and it mostly just works. And I'm working with some folks in the Go team to hammer out some of the issues. They were really looking at what we do when they designed it. So it really does make some of these problems better.
Okay.
For us, but maybe not for consumers.
That's what I was asking, a series of questions, like what happens downstream, what happens to like K3S, K0S and stuff.
I think the staging approach is an interesting, I hate the word staging, but it's an interesting way to have our cake and eat it too. We can make our atomic changes to our components and we can publish them into individual repos that people can consume. And now we don't have to like fight all the tooling in order to make it work. Like the vast majority of this PR I'm working on for Workspaces is deleting code that assumes Go path. Like all the Gen-Go stuff becomes module aware, and it actually becomes vastly simpler.
Looking forward to that for sure.
It's a hell of a PR, I'll tell you that.
As long as it removes code more than it adds, I'm happy.
I'll assign it to you, Dims.
Thank you.
All right, I have to run to another meeting. So if we're done with this.
Yeah, unless Sergey or Ben has anything more, we can wrap it up for today.
No.
Going once, going twice.
I have 2 items on the agenda, but I can postpone it. Yeah. Not for this topic.
We can talk. We can let Tim go. Bye, Tim.
Yeah.
Yes, Sergey.
Yeah, sorry. I thought you wanted to finish the entire meeting.
No. I mean, if you have things to talk, we can talk. So that's what I was.
Yeah, it's not super critical. Like first one is a continuation of last topic. I mentioned that there are non-trivial changes between this types.co internal and staging.
Right.
And it's all expected to turn out. I still try to wrap my head around, like, is it worth to clean it up and like synchronize? Because once we will synchronize, there is literally no way to, I cannot come up with a way to make sure that PRs will not diverge these files again.
Right.
Is there any ideas, like, will we gain anything from cleaning it up? Like, has it ever?
I don't think there is any value in trying to make it look the same because it is meant to diverge. So it's already diverging. So let's go with it. Unless you want to do a one-time, just adding some comments where something has diverged. Like so there is an older copy and there is a newer thing that has some delta differences. So if you want to comment them, since you had to find out for yourself, right? Like, so we can add a comment at each of those instances where you saw a change. So you can, like, we should come up with a pattern that other people are going to follow down the line, right? So if you tell them, like, you got to do a comment that looks like this when you're diverging from the original copy, then people might, copy what you're doing and do the same when they have changes. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe
I would say.
I can.
Yeah, come up with a pattern so you can do some commenting and then let hopefully other people will continue the tradition.
Maybe I can create a document in community to explain the code organization between these two files. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And next topic is CRIAPI. I created issue. We need to come up with a policy how we version CRIAPI. There is quite I started writing document, but it's not completed yet. So I wanted to bring it up here and understand if there is any precedence or any thinking already was done before for similar APIs. Like first is I pasted the PR that adds a new method to CRI v1, and this method only needed will only be implemented in v1 containerd or v1 CRIO, because I mean nobody will backport this feature into 1.5 containerd at this point.
Right.
But we still need to add it in both places because we want to have binary compatibility because v1 and v1 alpha 2, mostly to prevent situations when we cannot convert one API to another API. So yeah, I don't see big, huge problem with that, but it's kind of indication where CRI API going to. So whenever we add a method, we will need to make sure that we work, this method is compatible backward and forward with all the runtimes, because we may have containerd. I will use containerd in these examples, but because CRI is a little bit more like versions with Kubernetes. So you'll have containerd that can go ahead of Kubernetes, just because 1.6 is released and people still using 120 of Kubernetes, so they should be compatible. I mean, we don't block this compatibility yet. We never declare that it's not supported. And opposite is possible when earlier version of containerd is being used with a newer version of Kubernetes, and it also being was never forbidden.
Yeah.
Even furthermore, there are projects there is a project for faster image download from there's an open source one that creates a proxy between kubelet and containerd. It just inserts itself to hijack some image pool secrets and store it and somehow process them. And it's it creates a weird situation when half of CRI API is being v1 and half of CRI API being v1 alpha 2. And then, I mean, when we only have v1, we also will have this situation when you cannot predict which methods are supported and which are not. So it creates a situation when we need to somehow test skew of versions. I mean, we can declare that all the version changes must be backward and forward compatible. If you create some non-backward and forward compatible versions, then you need to bump the major version, so it's build 2 or something.
Yeah.
But it also
all the things that you're saying shows us that we don't have guidance. We don't have written guidance for any of these things for the gRPC based APIs.
Yeah,
we have some for the REST APIs, but we don't have anything written down for the gRPC APIs, right?
Yeah. So once we get to that, so let's imagine we declare that everything needs to be compatible with the very first iteration of v1 API. I don't know whether it should be written this way, but some version needs to be the minimal supported, right? At this stage, we will need to create some tests, I think, to run, or at least run all the conformance tests against runtime implementing that, but we may not have this runtime. So maybe we can create some proxy runtimes that will only implement v1 of early supported version.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, from code organization perspective, how hard or easy it will be to do that, to import this specific version of CRI API alongside the full API, and so you can create this proxy in KK repository to use it in tests. Is it?
Honestly, I'm lost here.
So let's say I'm implementing end-to-end test, and I want to run all the conformance tests against runtime implementing earliest supported version of CRI. To implement that, I don't have runtimes that supports earliest supported version of runtime, because we may not, like, containerd of 1.5 may not be 1.6 may not be supported at this point.
Yeah.
So I need, instead of using specific runtime or implementing fake runtime, I can just set a proxy before containerd that will only implement v1, earliest v1 we support, and then run test against this proxy that proxies to containerd. So now I need to compile this proxy somehow.
Yeah.
And the question is, how will, like, from code organization, will be any problems compiling this proxy?
I don't see where we'll end up getting pulled in. You know, other than, like, I don't know I don't know if we know that when we have a REST API question, we go to API machinery. We don't have anything for gRPC, right, at this point. So from the scenario that you're saying, it seems almost like we need a binary that listens on a sock and it forwards things, and it'll implement a bunch of these interfaces, and we talk to one of them, and it'll turn around and delegate it back to a version of containerd, you know, that kind of thing. So I don't. So I think it would be best left to SIG Node on how to do this, and use you and the problems that you've seen as a way to, like, write down what we should be doing and what we should not be doing. One thing that we haven't written down right now is, for example, the problem that you had that you know, when 123 was going out, there was a problem that you found out with the with the v1 and v2 APIs or something like that. Yeah, it was the CRI API, right? Yeah, it was the CRI API, and testing internally on GKE when you were trying to do that, you ran into a problem, and so we still haven't returned on that down anywhere on how to do this, or you know, or a CI job for that matter, to make sure that we don't run into exactly the same problem you know, that you encountered. So we should probably start there, and
okay, so we need to start with requirements and then come
right.
to code organization to implement these requirements.
Yeah. Exactly. So you need to figure out, like, so again, we have to think about, like, CRI API, should we just break it out and then start doing the proxy for CRI API, which will turn around and give it to a known CRIO or containerd, that kind of stuff. So and so that might be a good thing to shoot for on 125, to see if we can break things apart and add a proxy and do some additional testing, and in preparation for in a newer version of CRI API.
Okay. Yeah, I will bring it back to SIG Node to discuss.
Okay.
But there is no precedence of, I mean, I know that other SIGs doing something similar, but there is no written guidance or anything.
Right. Yeah, for gRPC APIs, I'm pretty sure that you are on the leading edge there, Ben, unless you can think of any. Yeah, I don't think so. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. There is nothing else and nobody else has shown up. So see you all in 2 weeks. Bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye, Ben.